Hi, this is James Governor from RedMonk, and we're here for another episode of RedMonk TV to talk about an interesting new product called Nimble. Nimble fits into a space that RedMonk calls the stackless stack. And basically, we're lucky enough to have the developer behind that product, Robert Dunne, from Paremus Software here to talk about it. So, nice to see you, Robert. Thanks for coming along. We can almost start with where did this Nimble name come from? Did you get a large marketing department to spend a lot of time focus groups and so on to get that name?
No, it was early on before it was written. I was actually thinking it was our main engineering achievement was to come up with this name. We have
no. You've got a slogan as well, haven't you?
We have, yeah. So
making modularity manageable.
That's right. Yes. So yeah, we came up with these, which is I think they do something. I mean, Nimble is the name fits quite well because a lot of people are trying to adopt OSGi and are interested in doing things in a more modular way, but if you look at the news groups and things out there, people aren't finding it easy. It's difficult to interact with an OSGi shell. Things aren't as sophisticated as people are used to them being in something like Bash under Unix. And resolving dependencies is just a world of pain for most people. Again, you can read about that everywhere. And what people, whereas on the other hand, the rest of the industry is let's make everything more agile, simpler, more nimble, shall we say? So that's why we called it Nimble. And yeah, the goal is to make modularity more manageable by solving those problems. There's one other problem I should point out that people have with OSGi, which Nimble isn't addressing, and that's the one: how do you build your bundles in the first place? Mm-hmm. How do you get the dependencies right at build time? And we have another project called Sigil, which we've donated now to the Apache Foundation, right? Which is all about making that build the build system work very well for bundles and IDEs. Have a OSGi-centric view of your code. So, with those three things, I think we're trying to tackle the main stopping blocks, in the way of making OSGi a nice, easy thing to do and exposing its power.
Okay, and let's talk a little bit more about that. It was a bit unfair there. I jumped in on the developer that comes up with nice marketing terms angle there.
It's an alternative career, maybe.
An alternative career. Let's take a step back and describe a little bit about what is OSGi. Mm-hmm. What difference is it making to the world of Java middleware? Right. And then a little bit more about this dependency problem.
Okay.
That would be, I think, quite useful.
All right. OSGi. It's an attempt to make Java more modular. In a way, it's kind of. It would have been nice if it had been that way from the start. And if you look at the history of OSGi, it was one of the very early JSRs, maybe 6 or 7, something like that. But although it came into being in the late 90s. It's only really gone mainstream, certainly enterprise in the last, I guess from our point of view in the last 5 years, but I mean for most people in the last couple of years, and now it's really ramped up to the point where all the major app server vendors and probably everybody vendor side is trying to do everything with OSGi these days. Though now it's hitting developers in banks and other large institutions. Now so it's this modularity layer, and it's trying to make the dependencies between your jars, which explicit, and a bundle is a jar with its code level dependencies. It depends on other packages made explicit. And the nice thing about that is that by just satisfying, by looking at a bundle, seeing what its dependencies are, plugging in the things that satisfies those dependencies recursively, you can know that you have everything to make that bundle run. And that you don't need a human there either. That's automatable.
Okay.
Which is very nice. Although it's very nice, if you don't have a tool that does it for you, it's very hard because you have which bundle out of this universe of bundles is the one that satisfies my dependency, and there are alternate ways of resolving things. You can get into all kinds of problems, and it can take you a long time. And when you do finally make your bundle resolve, with a big long list of dependencies, you don't know quite which one does what. It isn't recorded, so if you try and change something, things can be very brittle. So how do I stop that from breaking? Okay. Should quickly comment that there's another. This is the modularity layer of OSGi. There's the service layer as well. Once you've actually made things modular, they can interact by a very nice dynamic services model. So it's kind of the SOA side of OSGi, which is also very important.
So supposing I'm a developer, I've begun to get a sense for OSGi.
Yes.
How do I get this Nimble thing? How do I actually engage with this?
All right.
Is it open source?
It's not open source, although it's standards based, and most of the things that it will load and run are open source. So I think you're not going to have an issue with it. It's obtainable for free under a renewable 30-day download, which is even usable in production. It just needs to be renewed every 30 days. It's a tiny download, it's 55k.
Okay.
So you can probably manage that without blowing your bandwidth.
You don't need to download 20 CDs.
No, that's right. Yeah, we'll ship it to you in the mail. So it's this. You download this tiny thing, unpack it, and you start it up. And depending on which, by default, if you run it, it will actually start it using Equinox, the IBM. Or careful. The
yeah, you
the
do need to be a little bit careful there.
The Eclipse framework is reference implementation, and if you but by using a different flag, say -F, it will download Felix or from Apache, or -K, Noclafish, and these don't ship with the product. These things download on demand and are cached locally on your machine.
Okay.
So that's the way everything really works. I mean, there's almost nothing when you start. When you just run it up initially, there are, I think, three bundles, or 4 if you have a console, which I guess you will in the first run. Everything else gets pulled in as and when you need it. Even commands. You type a command, Nimble will notice that command isn't there, download it, install it, and run it. And you won't even, apart from maybe seeing the library download, you won't even have to rerun your command. It just downloads and just passes the arguments and just carries on. So it's super dynamic in the way it's built. If you compare this to the other sort of shell and framework like things like that, they're typically in circa 30 bundles.
Yeah.
So you've got a lot of their dependencies to worry about. And they have their own sort of strategies for avoiding you bumping into their dependencies. But our strategy is have hardly any.
Right.
So that's how you get going with it. And then, well, shall I tell you a little bit about some of the things it does? Or?
Yeah, please. Yeah, that would be great. We're going to do a demo in a minute, so we can kind of get a bit more depth there in terms of capability. But yeah, I think as much as anything else, to your point, you mentioned the news groups. Lots and lots of people are beginning to experiment with OSGi. Certainly, vendor side, there's a lot of support for it. We are seeing it in the enterprise, but clearly there's a fair amount of education to be done.
Right. Yes.
It is very early days for the technology, so I think just from the helping people to understand perspective, we're really at that stage. So yeah, a little bit of what specifically the product does, and then we can go on into the demo.
Right. So it has addressing the problem I mentioned earlier, it has a shell, which is very like, if you're familiar with Bash, the Unix shell, it will seem very familiar to it. It has the same kind of history, completion, same kind of startup scripts. You can customize startup. You can run it in a headless way and SSH in. Just everything you kind of expect from a Unix-like shell, but all oriented around OSGi, and even allows you to kind of load new modules in a way that's probably quite familiar to you if you have a Linux distribution. Something like using something like apt, under Debian or something like that. The other side of it, they're integrated quite well, is the resolver side. This is the bit that figures out all of your dependencies and installs them and allows you to kind of not only install everything, resolve it and install them, but uninstall them as well and reinstall after you change something. So you can update effectively. And this can make things very agile because you're not having to restart your container. You can just quickly back forwards. The resolution process itself it isn't wholly deterministic based purely on the bundles. You can set policies that control the way it resolves. This is very useful, so you can say if you're deploying a bundle that happens to be a war as well, or a web application bundle, well, by default Nimble will download and if it's not already there, but start up a web container for you and everything. All you say is, you say what you want. You say, I want to run this war. Yeah. And Nimble just gets everything needed to run that war and starts it up.
As you say, like apt-get, it's the same kind of idea.
Exactly. But but it's runtime as opposed to just pure install.
Yep.
So but you see your web app's there and deployed at that moment. When as soon as you've just said deploy this war, you didn't have to go and start up Jetty or something explicitly. But by default, it runs under Tomcat, and this is under control of policy. So you just change policy. Remove it, add it again, runs under Jetty, and so on and so on. And a lot of the other things like optional dependencies, and there's a thing called OSGi fragments.
And can you choose a range of containers, or?
Yes, is the answer. It's very. I mean, the two we come with, we've got a script, but if you set the policy, the two we come with limit you to Jetty and Tomcat from the Spring DM distributions at the moment. But I think we're going. There's an RFC 66, which is about the. I think a standard way of doing a web container on OSGi, and we'll probably just support that, and I expect there'll be lots of implementations of that.
Okay. Well, I think it's probably a good time to look at the product, so let's do that. Okay.